All right, LSU Clemson next Monday night. We're in game week. We're in game week for the national championship as Tigers will kick it off next Monday night inside the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. T-Bob was talking a little bit about Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow in the headlines. Lawrence is coming into this game with a pretty embarrassing win-loss record as a college starting quarterback where he's undefeated.
But it goes back even crazier in high school.
Dates back, right? This has got some history to it.
Yeah, so he went to a big high school in Georgia, Cartersville. And in fact, there was a great athletic article this morning. The last time that Trevor Lawrence lost a football game was November 17th, 2017.
Wow.
And, we have just hit 2020. That was 780 days ago. He lost to a school that I'm familiar with. He lost to Blessed Trinity. He had a 41-game winning streak going in to that high school game. So he won 41 games in a row in high school, lost this game. Then he's now won 29 games in a row in college,
so that was his last high school game?
That was his last high school game, senior year. They lost in the playoffs to Blessed Trinity. They were like 30-point favorites. Great win for Trinity. But what it means is that in high school, he was 52-2 as a starter.
Wow.
With 2 state titles. 52-2. In fact, since he's been 14 years old, he has only suffered 3 losses. And again, only 2 as a starter. So when you combine that 52-2 with 29-0 in college, Trevor Lawrence is 81-2 in football since he's been 14.
That's good, right?
Years old. It just shows you like how foreign the idea of losing is to Trevor Lawrence and kind of a little bit of the hill to climb.
So would you say the scouting report on Trevor Lawrence is that he's a winner?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a safe assumption to make. And I don't even really have any great point to make with this because, look, part of that comes from playing at like a high school powerhouse and you go to Clemson at just the exact right time where they're a powerhouse and they play in a conference where they are just clearly better than everybody else in that conference, so he's rarely tested. Although when he was tested against Ohio State, you saw how he stepped up in a big way. And maybe that's the point, right? It's just that, like, he just finds ways to win, even in the games where they shouldn't, or even in the games against good teams, bad teams. He's just always found a way.
Have you watched him play a whole game? Like, have you watched him play?
The Ohio State game.
Right. I saw him play the Ohio State game, and then for whatever reason, I was watching the Syracuse game last year where they nearly got beat at home.
Yeah.
And he got knocked out of that game.
Yes.
If you remember. And early on, he was very vulnerable, and you could tell that was a state that he was very uncommon and uncomfortable to, right? Like, you mentioned the record, and it sounded like he probably played at a high school powerhouse. You know that better than me, being from Georgia. But he was very uncomfortable early on in that game when they were playing from behind. Like, you could tell that was a scenario and a situation that he was unaccustomed to and just almost didn't know how to deal with it that young. Now, since then, they haven't done it many times, but they've done it a little bit more, and you could tell in that Ohio State game, he was a little bit more comfortable. That was the first time.
That's the thing, right? That's the counterpoint there, right? Is that, like, you would hope that he and it still will be a foreign experience to him if you jump up on him early, but he did go down 16-0 against Ohio State, and then he was the one who made the plays. And even his running ability then set up the eventual game-winning score to Etienne. So he found a way to get it done.
I didn't think he could do that. I didn't think he could make that play. I thought that he could beat you with his arm. He could beat you a little bit with his athleticism as far as extending plays. But getting out and outrunning an Ohio State defense in the open field for a long touchdown run, I didn't think he could do that.
Well, it's smart, too, by Clemson, just from a game plan perspective, because they were struggling to run the ball. And the thing is, when you have a quarterback that can run like that, and if you start going to that, it gives you a numbers advantage, right? Because you're able to man up and you're able to put the quarterback one-on-one with the free safety. That's exactly what Clemson did, and then he ends up housing it. So just a little food for thought on Trevor Lawrence's incredible win-loss.
Another name to watch for Clemson as this game kicks off on Monday night is going to be Isiah Simmons on defense for Clemson. Brent Venables, who is, he's up there with the reputation of Dave Aranda as being one of the brightest minds on that side of the ball in college football. He's definitely one of the most well-paid on that side of the ball. And
I would say his reputation's even probably a little better than Aranda's, at least in the general public. I don't know about among high football mind circles.
Been around for a little longer.
Yeah, and he's just his defenses statistically have been unbelievable.
He was at Oklahoma before he got to Clemson. If you remember LSU, who captured that national championship in New Orleans 15 years ago yesterday, or 16 years ago yesterday in 2003, Brent Venables was the defensive coordinator in that.
And and that was an incredible defense, right? But it is interesting comparing Venables and Aranda because you start to see a lot of similarities in terms of their strengths. I think that both coaches are very good at kind of customizing and adjusting their scheme to whatever personnel they have that year. Venables has done a great job this year, given that they don't have that great D-line this season. In fact, like LSU's front seven is actually better than Clemson's this year. But Venables, in good coaching fashion, he's adjusted. And it seems like just reading, so again, that the article in The Athletic today where Andy Staples and Bruce Feldman, Bruce did it from the LSU perspective, talked to coaches that have played LSU. Staples talked to coaches that have played Clemson. It offers some fascinating insight. And when guys are talking about Venables, as Staples said, it almost sounds like people are talking about the boogeyman because his ability to give you a lot of looks and adjust week to week, right? Like a new systems week to week. His ability to pick up signs in game. That's what a lot of people talk about. He's almost like a savant in terms of reading offensive signals, picking up your signs, and being able to use that to his advantage. It might be unmatched in terms of those week-to-week adjustments and those schemes, and that's interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, it highlights a player that you mentioned, Isiah Simmons, because he is Clemson's Grant Delpit.
Better, right?
Yes, this season for sure, But
he's a better athlete.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get, yeah, you could probably say that.
I mean, they stand Simmons up at the line of scrimmage and make him a pass rusher on third down.
So that is the point here is that we've talked a lot about positionless football lately, right? And how much Jacoby Stevens and Delpit and Dave Aranda, ever since Mo Hampton brought back the 3 safety looks, Dave Aranda's really been able to play some positionless football. Isiah Simmons is the definition. Like Jordy said, he can play coverage. He's part safety. He can tackle, play linebackers. He's part linebacker, and then he's part pass rusher.
Well, he leads them in tackles, sacks, and tackles for loss.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. In fact, he's the only – so he has 64 tackles, 6 sacks, 11 and a half TFLs in the year. He is the only Power 5 player with a stat line like that.
Also has 5 breakups, which leads Clemson.
Yeah. So, I mean, Isiah Simmons does he does it all. And it feels like he is the key to trying to stop Burrow, whether it's confusing him because, like, you can't use him as a key for what coverage they're doing because he can do so many different things. And that's the advantage that Dave Aranda creates with his positionless football is he can disguise coverage. It's the same thing that Venables and Isiah Simmons is able to do. So why I said, though, his ability to change things week to week, one, that's interesting because Isiah Simmons and how he can do everything. And the second reason is, remember, Brady's talked about this recently, and Burrow has, where teams are not giving them the looks that they've done all year long.
Yeah, Burrow said in the SEC championship postgame that he told his coaches the week of, we might as well just stop watching film.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to see what we see on film.
So that speaks to two things. I think it speaks to the overwhelming threat of this LSU offense. I think it speaks very highly of Burrow's ability to process information in game and adjust and still dominate. But what happens, those other teams that did that, like Kevin Steele and Jordan, they're not used to doing that. What happens when you have a guy in Venables that's his forte, is mixing things up and being creative and specifically tweaking for whoever the opponent is. And that's another reason why this game becomes so fascinating. The chess match, not just before the game, but the in-game adjustments between Brady, Burrow, and Ensminger versus Venables, it's like a heavyweight boxing match. I mean, it is the elite of the elite, and it's exactly what you want in a national championship.
And both guys have characteristics and habits, and Venables has showed that he loves the blitz when times get pressure, when pressure ratchets up. And we've seen what Burrow does in the blitz. I've been invited in the blitz all season long on Burrow because what I saw in Austin, blitz him, he'll kill you. You know what I mean?
But Venables knows that.
Yeah.
So how does he disguise? Does he go try to disguise his blitzes like some zone dog stuff where he maybe looks to confuse Burrow? Does he just prioritize coverage like other teams have tried to be? Like the bottom line is I actually don't think that that Clemson's going to be able to stop LSU. I don't think the front seven's good enough, and the secondary is the strength, and I think that LSU's receivers are better in the secondary. So it's going to be about that LSU defense stepping up.